inferring that they probably just created so many of these, and investors are like, look, I'm not buying this anymore. You got to put this on the blockchain. Today, I'm talking to you about Brazil and how they put $130 million in farm debt on the XRP Ledger, how Brazil issues the debt with the stablecoin RLUSD, and what exactly is this debt, the CRA, and how is it tokenized on the ledger? Stay tuned. So Brazil's VERT debuts tokenized credit platform on the XRP Ledger with a $130 million issuance. So this is to attract a broader market. And this is the farmland that I talked to you about. And how they're doing it is they're doing it with these CRAs. I'm going to explain more later in the video on exactly what a CRA is, but you can think of that as just a debt instrument for future crops. So these real world assets are being represented as debt through the CRA. Let me explain this. All that is a token that lives on the XRP Ledger, which is the rails for the system. The reason for this is to record and pretty much track with a global ledger on the rails to verify who has a CRA and where. So they'll be able to get a wider audience and attract more investors. So I'm going to explain this a little bit deeper. This is now considered digital credit. And credit, all that is a fancy word for debt. And if you can create debt, you create more money in the system. So that's money that doesn't exist, but you just created it. And so if you can expand your debt instruments on a new environment like the XRP Ledger, which is ISO compliant, in my opinion, it's going to bring a lot of credibility to some of their financial instruments that they're creating, like the CRA. And remember, I'll go over the CRA and what exactly it is, but just think of that as just debt that's living on the XRP Ledger. So similar to my last video, they're partnering with these exchanges. For example, this one is BYX, and this is to help bring their CRA, their debt, their farmland onto the ledger. So they work with these companies, and these companies go on the XRP docs and they just look at it and say, okay, tell me how to create an NFT to put it on the XRP Ledger. XRP is very credible for these organizations, and it has the ISO compliant. So that's part of the reason why I like it so much. But let's explore this some more. So about 200 million, and that's in their fiat currency, about $40 million in net assets, and expected to scale to 1 billion, which is about $190 million. And this is important because I personally believe they're trying to get out of their fiat system onto the dollar, because the dollar is not inflating as much. So if you can move your assets, your CRA debt instruments onto the blockchain, you can borrow against them and have your stable coin for the government, your government-backed cash flow, and everyone's going to get paid. And I think this is a great way to almost bring a lot of credibility to all of your financial assets. So this is interesting. I'm kind of reading between the lines on this article, but automation meets regulation. I think they were having issues with almost ghost farmland, where investors would buy this product called the CRA, which is represented the farmland from, foreign investors would come in and buy it. And they probably had issues with, like, did this actually exist? How many debt instruments existed? And remember, this is just like some contract that they created to sell to foreign investors. And so they probably came into XRP and the company BYX, and they wanted some like regulation with it. And it's also interesting, they also talk about VERT Sign, a blockchain-based formalization and document signing solution built on the XRP Ledger. So I think, I'm inferring here, but I think they had problems with like double assets being created, and you had this ballooning effect. And you see that all the time. And yeah, bringing structured credit funds to on-chain and automating key contractual processes. And so, like I said, I think they just wanted a way to verify that you can't just keep creating these contracts and selling them. And they want a way to, in my opinion, to get off their fiat currency and bring some credibility, basically bring these debt instruments onto the blockchain and borrow against them in the stable coin, which is the US dollar, RLUSD. Kind of having some fun with this. So with CRA, and just think of that as a fancy debt instrument. Think of that really as like a person comes in and they say, I owe you agricultural farmland. And, they bring it all together, bundle it, the lawyers look at it, therefore it is, and they created a debt instrument. So it's a fixed income security backed by receivables and agribusiness activities. So they looked at all the farmers and they said, hey, they're going to produce this much harvest. They bundle it all together in this contract called the CRA, and they give it to investors. So like I said, I'm inferring that they probably just created so many of these, and investors are like, look, I'm not buying this anymore. You got to put this on the blockchain. So farmers needed the money. Yeah. So like I said, they're generating money, issuing debt, and they sell it they sell it for future harvest, and they package it into a CRA. Investors buy the CRA. And I know I don't want to lose people here, but just really think of the CRA as like an IOU for, agricultural business. So I was doing a lot of research on this, but this is going to shock you. Brazil's agribusiness is about 20% of their GDP. So really think about this. So they're creating these financial instruments, and they're putting it on the blockchain, and they're backing it, or they're borrowing against it based on the RLUSD, which is the US dollar. So farmers need billions in credit every year. And this is kind of like the global trade problem, where really XRP is supposed to solve like the local business, the small business. And I think they get bogged down on the regulation of it. And XRP and like digitizing these credit instruments is supposed to cut down on that process. And that's why we're seeing a lot of this tokenization efforts of like digital instrument or digital credit, putting it on the blockchain so that there's a faster flow of money, and that hopefully farmers get the money. So a CRA from Brazil is similar to an asset-backed security here in the United States. I'm going to leave this on here, and I'm just going to talk to you. Really, the name of the game is generate these contracts that represent securities and tokenize them, which is an NFT. And the reason why they do that is to bring credibility to their debt instrument that they just created. They're also going to get a global audience, and they're going to be able to borrow from not only their small investor pool that they have on their local stock market, but from pretty much the entire world. XRP, we're just in the development phase of digitizing these credit instruments. And that's all they're doing, is creating a non-fungible token, an NFT, to these credit instruments.